customers maybe don't necessarily need as much help in the day-to-day operations, but what they do need help with is security. And that's actually the growth path forward for a lot of resellers.
You're listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This podcast is sponsored by D-Link Technology. Make your home smarter, safer, and truly seamless. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts, and our guest today is Curt Vurpillat, a security technology consultant with Ingram Micro. Welcome, Curt. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Great to be here.
On this episode, we are going to be chatting about security strategy. Curt, security applies to everyone, no matter what business they're in. What are you seeing as common problems businesses are having when it comes to security?
Yeah, security is one of those things that, it affects everyone. It doesn't matter if you're large or small. In fact, it's funny because I think small businesses have a tendency to think that maybe they're a little safer because, who's going to really attack me? But, statistically, that's actually not true, that small businesses are 3 times more likely to get breached than large ones. So, it doesn't matter what size you are, what industry you're in, it affects everyone. And some of the problems that exist across the board are, employees that 99% of the time they're doing their best, their motives are good, but a lot of times they don't know, right? So that's always a struggle, is to help your employees to, know what the right thing to do is and, know what risks are out there and how to avoid them. And another problem that's kind of a fairly recent phenomenon is security used to be kind of about building a wall around your castle and protecting what's inside. And, with remote workers and mobile devices and cloud-based data and applications, there's really no longer a perimeter. And that's, I think, maybe one of the biggest struggles that companies are facing now is, how do I protect my gold when it's no longer being stored at one place? And it's just a constantly changing landscape. So, maybe unlike other things in networking and IT that have been fairly constant, security changes faster than anything. So keeping up on what the latest and greatest is and, what the biggest threats are, that's a challenge for everyone.
And I know Ingram is working hard, as always, which we hear on this podcast a lot, to bring education and solutions to help businesses get smarter and better protected. One thing Ingram is doing is to help resellers build their security strategy from nothing to something. Can you explain how a reseller or business can do that?
Yeah, for sure. And security is different for everyone. Not only in terms of kind of what they need to do, but just, in terms of what makes sense. It would seem reasonable to think that, maybe a bank it requires a higher security profile than a small retail shop or something. And understanding that is an important part of it. And it's the same thing with the resellers. Not all resellers, need to know the same things, but figuring that out is difficult. And at Ingram, we are kind of our first step is to sit down and take an assessment, both in terms of, what their capabilities are and where they want to be and who their customer base is and what makes sense to them from a security standpoint, and build from there. And what that looks like is, training both for their technical people as well as their salespeople, certifications, if that's applicable, getting services to maybe augment professional services that Ingram Micro has to augment whatever security service they have, and finally just connecting them with the right vendors and solutions so that they can have the right portfolio, again, the right kind of mix of security solutions and services that apply to their customers, because there really is a no one size fits all for this.
And what you were saying earlier, it doesn't matter if you're a small business or a large business. What do you do if you're a small business of maybe 10 to 15 people and you don't have somebody who their whole job is to make sure the business is secure? What would be a strategy for something like that?
Yeah, the historical strategy was, I put a firewall in front of my network and I put antivirus on my endpoints and I hope that that's sufficient. And, I guess maybe for a period of time, it was mostly adequate. And that just really isn't the case anymore. But the good thing is there's services and there's strategies you can employ that don't require a huge investment. You can get, security operations center services that monitor network traffic. And that's really just a few dollars a month per user. It's no longer such a huge investment that you have to have this big capital outlay. So there's ways of enhancing your security posture now, through services and kind of as a service offerings that are cost effective. And then again, I mean, there's third-party services offered through Ingram and other, partners out there that allow you to not necessarily, have to know how to do your own penetration tests or your own vulnerability scans or these sorts of self-assessments that bigger organizations do, used to be not available to smaller organizations. And that's not really true anymore. I mean, they're ubiquitous, they're readily available, and they're cost effective.
So for a business that says, I have a strategy in place, it's doing really well, sometimes there can be holes within it that is missing a security practice. Can you tell us maybe what some of those might be and how they can fix it?
Yeah, I would say there's probably two primarily. I mean, maybe a third, but the two big ones that I see are around compliance. I mean, regulations change all the time. So even, a security-focused reseller who has, all of the security solutions at their fingertips, rules change. A good example of that is California, depending on whether the governor signs it at the end of the year, will have a CCPA, a California Consumer Protection Act, which will have kind of a whole new layer of data privacy requirements. And that'll be something new. And even if you were a longtime security practitioner, you wouldn't necessarily have that capability. So that's the sort of thing that, we can come help and we can provide, partners to do audits and things like that and kind of train resellers to get up to speed on some of those new requirements. So that's one. I would say the other one is around services. I mean, even reseller partners that do penetration tests may not do some of the other security services, like I said, internal vulnerability scans. Something that's kind of big right now are like security scorecards, which are fairly low cost and non-intrusive way of just kind of getting an overall security assessment of your network. And an area where that's becoming really popular now is, I'm a big organization and I have all these suppliers. I have, HVAC suppliers and logistics suppliers and all these partners I work with. And frankly, since I'm interfacing with them and our networks are interfacing, I need to know how secure they are. And so having a way where I can, assess the security posture of our partners and things like that and our, resellers and customers is becoming, a part of the whole security landscape. So, those are kind of the two big areas. And then, third, just in general, again, security is changing. Things that used to be threats 10 years ago are less so threats now, but the things that are the big threats today didn't exist 5 years ago. So just, being able to keep up with this is challenging. And so I kind of always say security, cybersecurity and network security, it's a team sport. I mean, it's impossible to know everything. So, having a partner that can kind of help you fill in those gaps, whether they be knowledge gaps, service gaps, or solution gaps is super important.
Yeah, which brings us to, which I know you had said offline, that it's important to have a third party come in to give an analytical point of view. So can you speak to that a little bit more? Because that's what you're talking about here.
Yeah, for sure. And there's kind of two reasons for that. I mean, one that I just kind of alluded to is it's impossible to know everything. I mean, I've been doing this for 26 years, and certainly there's plenty of things that I don't know. I mean, there's no way of knowing everything, and it changes so fast. So having some additional resources or a different perspective to look and analyze, in the case of security, different threats and, different ways of protecting yourself is important. And then, a practical reason is also if I'm, a reseller who's protecting someone's network, asking me to come assess how good of a job I'm doing, it's a bit of a conflict of interest. Either I say, hey, I'm doing a great job, right? Which, brings into question maybe the validity of those results. Or, yeah, I'm doing a terrible job, which, makes the customer question, what have you been doing? So, getting somebody who has kind of a third party, non-biased opinion on someone's security posture is important to, make sure that it's thorough.
Hey everyone, we hope you're enjoying this episode of B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. Let's pause for a moment to recognize our sponsor, D-Link Systems. Are network speeds slowing you down or security risks top of mind? Talk with D-Link Systems. Leverage award-winning products and deploy networks that are second to none with D-Link wireless, surveillance, and switching solutions. Contact Ashley Ruggiero at Ingram Micro today. That's Ashley, ASHLEY.Ruggiero, RUGGERIO at ingrammicro.com. Also, before we jump straight back into today's episode, we wanted to let you know about one of the industry's most important events, Ingram Micro's ONE 2019 event on November 18th through November 21st at the Gaylord Rockies Convention Center. ONE is your chance to experience what's new and exciting in security, IoT, cloud, and more. Also, you'll be able to network with other businesses, industry experts, Ingram Micro associates, and our vendor partners. Contact your Ingram Micro representative for details on how to register today. All right, let's get back to the show.
And a lot of what you're talking about couples with something Ingram provides and launched this year called the Security Practice Builder. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's kind of a multi-step process, and it kind of, can take different paths. Like I said earlier, there's no, one size fits all when it comes to security. And our Security Practice Builder is built on NIST framework, and I won't go into too much detail on that, but it's essentially a set of rules and guidelines that are laid out by the federal government as well as industry experts in security. It started in 2013 and has been enhanced since then. That provides just exactly that kind of recommendations, guidelines, frameworks on how to make yourself secure and how to build a security practice and how to secure your data, and within the confines of privacy and just kind of everything associated with network and cybersecurity. So we within that framework, we typically sit down and we assess where the partner is, and we kind of ask them questions and kind of go through what do you do well and what do you not do well. And then, let's talk about their customers, right? What do their customers need and what do they not? I mean, if they're enterprise-facing customers, maybe they have different needs than if they're small business. And if they have compliance, then they have, different needs than if they're in unregulated industries. And so understanding a reseller's capabilities as well as, what's important to them with their client base is step one. And from there, we kind of, again, take different steps to help them achieve, what it is that they need. And that can look anything like, assisting them with training up their sales folks so that they can speak to security solutions with their customers, training their technical people so that they can have the appropriate certifications to either, get better pricing or understand solutions better. Again, it's also a services play potentially. So if they're not offering all the security services that their customers need, we can connect them with those security offerings and augment what it is that they already have. And then we have an entire line card of solutions from, all the top security vendors. So a lot of times it's engaging them with the right vendors and, getting them, with appropriate demos and things to just kind of allow them to incorporate new vendors and new solutions into their portfolio so that they can go to market, with a well-trained sales staff, a well-trained technical staff, services as needed and, and all the right vendor solutions.
And you've had this program now, like I said, for almost a year. Can you share with us some success stories you have of those who have implemented this new program?
Yeah. And it's funny. It kind of seems like, the people that engage fall into kind of, I typically say one of three categories. I mean, there's ones that come to us that don't really have a security strategy. I mean, they're probably doing, like I said, firewalls and antivirus and not really much more. And then there's others that come to us with a pretty robust security strategy and maybe are missing one piece of it. And for both of those, there's a path forward. I mean, I had one partner that did almost exactly what I said. They're like, Curt, we do a little bit of email security, we do a little bit of endpoint security, and we do firewalls. We don't know what else. And, for them, it's a lot about education. It's a lot about sitting down and talking about, what it is that their customers may need. And let's talk, whatever that looks like. Is it managing their, identity and their access, for cloud applications? Is it, going over a thorough backup strategy? I mean, it's funny because data backup is often not thought of as a security play, but I would argue it's the most important security play. I mean, if you have your data stored in a safe place that people can't get to it, that's probably the only real, true, foolproof way of making yourself secure. So, it's letting resellers, through kind of like this NIST framework, which has kind of a protection piece of it and a detection piece of it and a recovery piece of it, walking them through these different pieces and making sure they have every single area covered. And then I had a reseller partner just a few weeks ago, who called up. It was something similar to what I said earlier, which is, we provide security audits for regulated industries. They're into PCI for finance. They're into HIPAA for medical. They're into GDPR for European companies and international companies. And they, said, hey, CCPA for California companies, we don't have that solution. We don't really know how to provide an accurate audit for our California customers who are asking us for it already. Can you help us? And that's something that, we can help them with our partners that already have that capability, who can maybe white label it for them and then build up their capability so that, eventually they can do this on their own and they can become, just add that to their portfolio.
And you've been doing this a long time, this kind of consulting on security. What is it about helping businesses and resellers grow that excites you so much?
Security is kind of a hot topic now. And I'll tell you that when I talk to a lot of resellers, in all candor, the way of them, making money and surviving, which was largely, break, fix and installing networks and, making sure that everything works, that's starting to kind of erode. And I get resellers that come to me and they say, the business that I've been doing in the IT space for the last 10 years, like I see it starting for the first time to crest or trend down, and because customers are either getting their own, cloud-based applications themselves, so they don't necessarily need a reseller to install it. Or, Windows has gotten reasonably self-sufficient with their patching and things. So customers maybe don't necessarily need as much help in the day-to-day operations, but what they do need help with is security. And that's actually the growth path forward for a lot of resellers. And so they kind of come to me saying, hey, I need to make sure I keep up with the times on security is your answer. And it provides, really another revenue path for them, which is great. And, it's really just overall the area that the industry is going in terms of, making sure that things are secure and customers' data is private. And in a time when, customers' data is everywhere all the time and privacy is a huge concern, assisting with that and kind of making the world a better place, I think is also rewarding.
I love that. If somebody wants to get access to the Security Practice Builder, or they want to connect with you to learn more about anything we discussed, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can always reach out to me. The easiest way is probably through my LinkedIn profile, or, certainly can send me an email. We do have our Security Practice Builder, self-assessment, which is kind of step one for a lot of our partners. It's at www.the2112group.com/security scope. And if you go to that, there's actually a self-assessment you can fill out. It takes about 20 minutes. The results of that are sent to the person who fills it out. They're also sent to me and my team. From there, we kind of analyze it, figure it out maybe where their gaps are, kind of reach out to them and start that conversation and help develop a roadmap of things that they can do to, again, enhance their security offering and bolster their portfolio.
And the last question we like to ask here on this show is, where do you see technology going in the next year?
Man, there's a lot of right answers to that question because it's going in lots of different directions. But I'll tell you the area that I see, maybe the biggest growth and maybe even the biggest excitement too is really kind of about automation and AI, machine learning, and couple that with some new technologies like IoT. I mean, I'm working with a reseller partner right now who is doing smart agriculture, and the solution ultimately looks like a farm where the tractors will plant the seeds themselves, monitor via satellite the water and the bugs and whether or not they need to spray for things, and can monitor the crops from satellite, can put sensors in the ground to monitor potassium levels and hydrogen levels and nitrogen levels and things, and can actually turn on the irrigation system to water automatically, can provide drones to provide pesticide, and could ultimately harvest. I mean, we live in a world, and maybe that's not in the next year, but that's coming, where you could go from a dirt field to a full yield of crops without ever having somebody step on the field. I mean, that's a crazy concept. Like 20 years ago, that wouldn't exist, but the days of automation and machine learning and these sorts of, cool technologies, I mean, driverless cars, and it's a brave new world out there, and it's changing really fast, and it's super cool. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I haven't heard about that one with the farm, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Curt, for being here and sharing all of your passion and knowledge with us today.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me.
If you like this episode or have a question, join the discussion on Twitter at Ingram Tech Soul with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, hosted by Carrie Roberts and sponsored by D-Link Technology. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production by Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today in your favorite podcast platform.